get my 6. Hey everybody, welcome back to the most amazing homesteading channel on the internet that has absolutely nothing to do with homesteading. This is actually take 2 because when I pulled the phone off the mic, I started singing like I was a rock star, which clearly I'm not. And then I walked around for 10 minutes telling this story about what I'm going to talk about today. This liberal university putting up a border wall, separating family and friends for profit, greed. And then I realized the camera wasn't rolling. I guess I accidentally stopped. So let me start over. Welcome again. So I'm going to walk around the property. I'm actually doing my cool down. No, I don't usually dress like this. I actually just did a 15-mile mountain bike ride. And I figured while I'm doing my 10 to 15 minute cool down walk, I would make this video. So I put on a shirt and a hat. It says U.S. Army, of which I'm a veteran. And yes, I know my hat usually says something else. Not today. The hat usually has the V on there and the cross sabers for the University of Virginia. I did not graduate from the University of Virginia. My family and I have been UVA football fans since we came here in 2016 from the Philippines. My wife's from the Philippines. Our son was born there. He was 5 when I moved back to the U.S., brought them with me. I've been a UVA football fan for much longer than that. I originally moved to the Charlottesville, Virginia area in 1999. Started going to some home games. Again, not an alumnus, but it was a hometown team. I thought I'd go root for them, and it was a wonderful experience. It was enjoyable. There's the house. You don't see it much because I'm usually up in the woods, but I'm giving you a tour of my property because a lot of you have been with this channel since the beginning. You remember when this was an 18-inch long stick that we rooted from a weeping willow tree that's now, it's 25 feet tall. There's the old gravel driveway. I do not live in Charlottesville. I live in the county outside of the city because I'm a country boy, and this is the life I like to live. Here's the pond. We had a proper rain last night, so what we would call a gully washer back where I'm actually from, West by God, Virginia. And so the water's dirty. But I'm going to give you a tour, and I want you to see, it's going to be relevant to this story. So let me jump into it because a lot of you folks are here because of the title. You're like, what's this crazy guy talking about? Hi, I'm Crazy Lake, by the way. Nice to meet you. That was my nickname in the Army. I won't tell you why they called me that, but it was relevant and fitting. It'd probably get me kicked off social media. No, I didn't commit any war crimes. I was effective. I'll just say that. Okay, so I'm going to show you my bees. I'm going to get on with the story. We got about 20,000 bees in this box. Love pollinators. Support the pollinators to the degree to where we actually take care of some. I think a swarm might be getting ready to split and leave this hive, so I put another box out here hoping to capture it. But if not, it's no big deal because most of the swarms find holes in the old dead locust tree up here. People have asked, why don't you cut that old locust tree down? There's a lot of bees up in that tree, and they need it. And there's a lot of birds up there, bluebirds nest in the holes that the woodpeckers make. There's so much life going on in that dead tree. So, all right. So here's the deal. I was talking about UVA football. Started out with throwing football. Football for us, for our family, and for our friends group, for our social circle, is a big part of our lives. Not because of UVA football. That's going to be an even lesser part of our lives now when you hear the story. And it has nothing to do with the team or the players. They're wonderful. Utmost respect for the coach, Tony Elliott. I've met him before in the past. Class act, okay? So, oh yeah, it's coming. You're going to find out why. So my son plays football. He's played flag football for 6 years. This is his first year playing tackle. I'm an assistant coach, certified, had to take the classes, have the background checks done. I've coached him in flag football for years, as have many of the fathers of his friends who have played along with him for all these years. Here's our man-made forest. My wife and our son and myself planted over 200 trees down here. We're going to walk through them. Not a tree in here was more than 2 feet tall when we planted them. We dug them up from the wood line on the far end of the property. You know, UVA plays football at Scott Stadium in Charlottesville, Virginia. My property is larger than Scott Stadium, probably to include the parking lot, okay? And this is going to be relevant because this is part of the story. So, it just, in the fall, we don't make plans. Our family and the other families who are involved with football know from August 1st, no plans between August 1st and pretty much Christmas, because we're consumed with football. Now, of course, last year, as you know, if you're a follower, after football season, we took off to the Philippine Islands and spent the whole winter over there. Didn't come back till spring. But we are dedicated to football, not so much because of the sport, but because we're dedicated to our son. And really, our entire social network, like in the real world, not on the internet, revolves around the football community in our area, because that's how we've just happened to meet people. We've met other families through our son being involved with football. We've met wonderful families. The people in our community who we would consider our best friends today, the people that we actually go out of our way to get together with on a regular basis, are people that we've met through football. There are children that I've coached, and we've become friends with their parents. And these children I haven't coached maybe for a couple of years because they've either ended up being on other teams or maybe they didn't play that season. We still go out of our way to get our families together because that's how much of a connection we've made. All right. So, I mentioned being in the Philippines all winter, and there are times when you get homesick when you're away from home, especially when you leave home for months at a time, like we do. We'll be sitting there on the white sandy beaches of the Philippines when we know it's below freezing here. You might remember on our Facebook page, Sick Twisted Humor, I would make taunting little teaser reels about, and they were true. One day, a good neighbor of mine whose son plays football on my team, he watched our house for us over the winter while we were in the Philippines, and he sent me an email one day, and he says, FYI, the water in the back of your toilets is frozen. That's how cold it was here. Of course, we turned off the power, the water pump, the well. But we didn't drain the toilets. They didn't crack, but we should keep that in mind next time. We're going to go to Peru down in South America this winter. Probably, if I like it, for the whole daggone winter. So, and I'd go out on the beach and make a reel, and I'd have my wife there. I'd say, honey, our buddy just said our water in our toilet's frozen. Do you miss home yet? And she'd laugh and say no. And we'd enjoy the rest of our 90-degree day on the beach with cold ones and good food and good people and family. I tell you, Dearly's family is my family. They love me unconditionally as I do them. And let me tell you, a lot of the friends that we have made in this community through football, that's just how we connected, have become family, and we love each other like family. When I need something or when they need something, I know I can call them, they can call me, and we will be there because we are family, okay? So we're sitting there on the beach, and we're talking about being homesick because, yeah, it happens. And we talk about what are some of the things we miss about back home. And one of the biggest things is what has been one of our funnest activities to do since we moved here in 2016. I moved back. I came originally in 1999, and I started going to UVA home football games then. Always loved it. Brought my family here from the Philippines in 2016 after I'd been over there for 5 or 6 years. Started going to the UVA football games, fell in love with it immediately. So we would be on the white sandy beaches of the Philippines reminiscing about going to the UVA football games. Now, is it because we're such big UVA football fans? No. Is it because we're such big football fans? No. So you can see a little bit of the road there because these trees haven't matured enough yet, but that's why we planted the man-made forest and the privacy hedges. And no, I don't, FYI, a lot of people wondering if I always dress like this, wearing shorts. No, I just finished a 15-mile bicycle run, so I figured I'd make this video while I'm doing my 10 to 15-minute cool-down walk. Here's the other, we made it to the other side of the man-made forest. We've got 8 rows. These are all Virginia burning bushes. One of the few plants we actually purchased. The rest, like I said, we dug them up from the far side of the property, transferred them down here and planted them. Another 2 years, you won't be able to see those power lines. So anyway, we loved, and I am using that as a past tense word, loved. And we actually went to the UVA game last night. Our team beat the University of Richmond by about 24 points. We were all calling it by 20, so we were right. But it was the experience of it all. And let me explain that experience to you. So we tailgate with a wonderful group of people. in the parking lot of Disharoon Park, which is where they play baseball and have the track meets. It's about 1.5 miles away from the stadium. We tailgate down there for hours, and we did this yesterday. Have a good time. These guys and girls come up from Lynchburg. They bring a full bar, tons of food, more food than you can eat. We always contribute. Dearly will cook up some Filipino food. Yesterday, she made a bunch of lumpia. I'll take a case of beer and contribute it to the bar. So it's kind of like nobody's taking advantage of anybody. It's everybody's pitching in. But the crew that comes up, they bring enough. But just it's a wonderful community, the people that go there. They want to make sure, hey, I want you to understand, we're not here to take advantage. If there's leftovers, leftover alcohol or whatever, bring it next time. So we do that for several hours. My son, his friends that go, will play football in the parking lot. They'll take a football, they'll pass for hours. They have a good time hanging out with the kids. And something that we have done and that other families have done for the 6 years that we've been involved with our son's football community is we take kids from his flag football teams to the games with us. Yesterday, we took our son and 2 other young men who are on the team. And most of these kids, it's not, they're from families who could certainly afford to go to the UVA football game. It's not expensive. You can get a ticket for $15 to get in. But maybe they just don't want to go. They don't want to do it. Maybe some of them might have to work on the weekends. And we love taking them. And it's not like we go out of our way to say, oh, look at us, we're martyrs, we're going to take all these little children to the football game. Daniel will just say, hey, can we take this kid and this kid to the football game this weekend? And we encourage him to mix it up so he's not always taking the same kids. And it's important just to do that to us. And I think he is starting to learn the importance of that and why we do that. And then there are other parents and other coaches who will take their kid and 2 or 3 kids. So what's always been neat in the past is you go into the game and there's this place called The Hill, this section, they call it the Force Side. It's behind one of the end zones. They're at the north entrance. It's behind the north entrance, and there are no bleachers. I'm hearing some weird stuff. You got to watch in the woods behind me. I have a suspicion it's a squirrel. I just heard it bark. But you never know. Keep watching. Never know who or what may or may not show up in the backgrounds of these videos. So anyway, oh, look at this. Look who just showed up. Hi. Don't be shy. Isn't it beautiful? There's so much wildlife out here, but you got to come outside and play to see it. So there's no bleachers in this section. It's just grass, and they call it the Hill. Now, this has always been the student section, the UVA student section. Sometimes there's a lot of students there. Excuse me. Most of the times there's not. When there are students there, UVA students, if UVA is down at halftime by 1 point or by 20 points, most of the students leave the game at halftime and don't come back because they move the party to their wherever. They're, on campus houses, off campus houses, dorm rooms, wherever they go to party, behind the rotunda. But the place doesn't clear out. It's not empty because at least half the people have always been people like us, locals. I'm not an alumnus, but I live here. I have always enjoyed going to the games, rooting for the home team. But it's locals and usually people that have children, because what happens is our kids will play on that grass. They don't watch the games. There was a local high school game the other night. It's a high school where our son will go to high school should we choose to send him back to public school. His entire middle school team was there. It's a middle school league. And it was great because the high school cheerleaders asked our kids' team to hold the banner for the high school varsity team to run through at the beginning of the game, pregame. And the kids loved it. They had on their jerseys, their game jerseys, and they got to see the big kids. And like last night, they were sitting behind the UVA players behind the bench and talking to the players. The players were giving them some of their wristbands and stuff after the game. The UVA players and coaches are wonderful, class acts, okay? So the adults, we'd set up on top of the hill or stand. it was such a special place because one of my best friends is a man who is in a wheelchair. He has been for a long time. And he goes to some of the games with us, and his favorite spot was to sit on top of this hill because you can get right off the pavement onto the grass, and it's a flat spot and it's a high spot. And he's got one of those wheelchairs that he can elevate his seat. He'd roll up to that spot, lock his wheels, raise himself up a little bit, and then he's at like the same height head-wise as we are, and we're standing there watching the game, watching the kids. He's got a kid our son's age, watching him playing on the grass. And it was always so interesting to sometimes talk to some of the students because they're wonderful young people. I remember last year, met a guy who was in medical school at UVA, and I just loved his story because he wasn't some well-off child who came from privilege, you know, from a wealthy family, which there's a lot of that at UVA, and that doesn't make those people bad people. You know, nobody has to be born poor, but nobody has to be rich either. It just so happens. And I know a lot of those folks who are wonderful people, and they've told me, they're like, Kevin, you know what a lot of people don't get is that so many people will hate you if you're born rich. I remember the first time one of them told me that, I'm like, what? They says, yeah, it's like, they're like, you know, if you're a rock star, if you're a celebrity, or if you're a professional athlete and you're rich, they'll idolize you. But if you're born rich, it's like they hate you. And that one particular conversation, the guy was really down. I said, dude, it's because they're jealous. I mean, here's the difference between envy and jealousy. Envy is actually a human emotion. It's natural to feel perhaps envious of somebody that maybe has more than you, or maybe has a prettier wife than you, or a nicer car than you. That's normal to be envious. Now, you got to keep it in check. And if I feel it coming out, because it comes out sometimes with me, I keep it in check. But now, jealousy is when you believe or you think that the person that has more than you doesn't deserve to have it. Envy is natural. You're kind of like, man, I wish I had what that guy had. But when you say, you know what, I wish I had what that guy had, and I deserve it more than him. What did he do to deserve it? Oh, he worked so hard to be born into the right family. He was born into a rich family, and that's why he's got money. And that's not fair. That's jealousy, and that's ugly, okay? So I explained that to that guy who was telling me about how when you're born rich, people will hate you and how much that sucked. That made him feel better. But after talking to him, we're still on my property, and this is relevant, by the way, for this story. That's a farmer over there cutting hay or something. But look, these trees have grown up so much on the back part of the property, you can't even see where we were down there, can you? Down there's the house, way down there. I'm telling you, this place is bigger than Scott Stadium, and this is relevant. Bigger than Scott Stadium in the parking lot, okay? So anyway, the kid I met at the UVA football game, he was here attending medical school from Puerto Rico. Grew up dirt poor, single mother, straight A student all through all of his schools. He went to UVA on scholarship. It's the only way he would have ever been able to go. He was telling me about how he had to take out all these student loans for medical school. I think the kid was like $250,000 in debt already. But he said he didn't care because he knew that as a doctor, he would earn enough money to pay it back, which he would. I mean, he wasn't one of these idiots who went to college and borrowed $250,000 to be a teacher. You'll never be able to pay that back. So he was a smart business minded kid, young man. He was like early 20s. And he said his ultimate goal before even paying his student loans back was to buy his mother in Puerto Rico a house. She's never owned her own home. They lived in various apartments throughout his childhood. And that's an example of the type of wonderful stories I would get to hear from these young people when I was sitting in that UVA student section with my wife, with our friends, watching our preteen children who are now teens, you know, play on the grass, see their buddies from school, friends maybe from other flag football teams. We'd see the other coaches from the other teams there with their teams. We'd talk about the game we played that Saturday morning. I don't think any of us were watching the game. And that was the point I was making earlier. When we took our middle school team to the high school game, they didn't watch the game. They ran around and had fun, right? Stayed mostly in the grassy areas. No, but the kids that age, they do not like sitting on metal bleachers, okay? So, again, my wife and I, on the white sandy beaches of the Philippines, it's freezing here, and we're missing home because we missed these experiences at Scott Stadium at UVA. You know, maybe having one too many at the tailgate, but walking a mile and a half up Alderman Road to get to the stadium and sweating it out, you know. Here's our campground, by the way. That bald spot's where our tent was all summer. We took it down. It'll go back up in the fall. Thinking about getting like an actual canvas type tent and putting it there permanently. So anyway, I hope you're enjoying the view. Here's the meat and the potatoes of this story. The University of Virginia, UVA, known to be a very liberal university, put up a border wall. They did. They put up a border wall this summer. It separated friends, it separated families, and it killed the fun. And it, for lack of a better term, they may have cut their nose off to spite their face. They may have shot themselves in the face. Here's what they did. They literally put up a barrier where that student section is, the fourth side, that whole 1/4 end of the stadium, where for generations it has been people's favorite spot to sit and watch the game. You can only get in there now if you are a UVA student and you have a valid UVA ID, or if you're a season ticket holder. I bought season tickets once in 2015 when I came back alone to do the stuff I needed to get done to prepare to have my family come over from the Philippines. And when I bought those season tickets, you pay for every ticket for every home game, plus they make you, now listen, they make you make a donation to the Virginia Athletics Foundation, VAF. It was $50, I believe, and you can't opt out of it. I kept clicking and trying to figure out, how do I buy these tickets without making this donation? There's no way. So if you want those season tickets, they make you make a donation, okay? So I did it, and then I felt like I'd been had afterwards. It's like, if I want to donate my money to UVA Virginia Athletics Foundation, I will do that. I didn't like being forced to do it, and I won't do it because I don't donate money to anybody. It's not that I'm greedy and I don't help people. Let me tell you, we do. I don't want to say I don't donate money to anybody. I don't donate my money to organizations, especially not-for-profit organizations, because so much of that money goes to pay the people who operate those organizations, and the amount that's supposed to go to the people that you mean to help doesn't get to them. And I've seen this stuff firsthand with these eyeballs in multiple third world countries, seen it at home here in the US. So I don't do it. But if I want to help somebody that I know needs help, I do. But it's because I want to do it. It's by choice. And I don't talk about it. I don't come on here and say, oh, I gave so-and-so X amount of dollars because I knew they had this medical condition and they couldn't get help if they didn't have the money. I don't come on here. We talked about a house that we built in the Philippines for my wife's sister, because we actually, some of you viewers actually chipped in on that, and that was several years ago. But there's a lot of stuff over there that I just don't talk about because I don't want credit for it, because that takes away the humility. If you're going to do something good for somebody, do it for the sake of doing good for that person. Leave the phone at home. Don't record it. Don't put it on social media. And then don't tell anybody about it. Okay? So that's how I roll. So anyway, we went to this game last night against the University of Virginia. I had a big limb fall up here off this giant oak tree. I got to cut that up. I'm going to this winter when temperatures are colder. One of our neighbors last week killed a copperhead on his property. I killed one on this property 2 years ago. And the folks around here had never seen venomous snakes here before, but I guess people like me are coming out and buying up some. This used to be a hayfield, but now I'm letting it reforest, so I guess the snakes are moving in. Oh, well, guess what? They were here first. So anyway, you just got to be careful. So that won't get cut up until they're in hibernation. I don't want to get in there on a copperhead. But, wow. It like one of the most wonderful, enjoyable experiences my family has had in this area in the United States was that UVA football game experience. And it's not about the team, even though they're wonderful kids, wonderful coaching staff. Most years, we can't name more than 3 people on the team. And sometimes then it's only their last names because we hear the announcer saying it over and over, because we're just really not that into UVA football. We're into football because we're into our kid, and our kid plays football. And I think there's some folks at the university who don't get this. Our friends, their kids, So we go there last night, and we go up. We're so excited to go to the student section, and I'd heard talk about they were doing something, but I didn't know exactly what the details behind it was. We get there, and there's that border wall that they had put up. They weren't letting us in. Nobody was allowed in. And the only people in there were UVA students. I get that. That's their section. I totally get that. But as somebody who has also sat in that section every home game that I could make it to if we didn't have our kids' football game on the same day, for the last 8 years, I never saw a single situation where any of those UVA students had a problem whatsoever with people who were not students sitting in that section. What's happened? Well, I mean, I mentioned my buddy in the wheelchair, and his space is gone. He can't sit there now. I still am very good friends with the man who used to be in charge of the ROTC program at UVA. Him and his wife are both combat veterans. He would get us tickets on Veterans Appreciation Weekend, and we would stand up there, and it was so cool because we would watch the game with students who are in ROTC at UVA, and that gave them the opportunity to ask us, combat veterans who have actually been to war, questions that civilians couldn't answer, that their fellow ROTC cadets couldn't answer, and veterans who had served but who never deployed couldn't answer. So it was a wonderful experience for them as well. It was just, there was this sense and this exceptional feeling of community. The locals were together, the students were together, ROTC cadets with combat veterans like myself and my friend who ran that program. But it's gone. Can't do that now. It's gone. So it sucked. So Dearly and I my wife, ended up sitting on some hard ass bleachers up in the nosebleed section. Our son and his two buddies started running around the stadium. They found another kid from the team, so they went to hang out. Okay. So we ended up actually running into, surprise, surprise, one of the kids I've coached for many years, on football and basketball. His father was with him, who's been a friend of ours for many years, and his brothers. Now, my friend's wife and this little kid's mom was out of state on a trip with her mother. So we sat with them. We're hanging out with them. I'm talking to this kid's dad. Hadn't talked to him in a few months. I saw him this summer once. Our kids had a sleepover together. Was talking to the kid. He was asking me questions about, he hasn't made the transition yet from flag to tackle. He's doing flag again this year. He might do tackle, he might not. So I was helping talk to him about that and how my son Daniel's made the transition from flag to tackle. So we text our son, Daniel. We say, hey, Daniel, this kid, so-and-so, we said his name, don't want to say it on the internet because he's a minor, is here, come say hi. So it took Daniel, he was on the other side of the stadium, took him almost 15 minutes to get there. He sat down, he's talking to this kid. They talked for like 15 minutes. He gets a text from yet another friend who's sitting on this other section. And he said, oh, so-and-so texted, he wants me to come see him. And I said, well, go see him. He says, Dad, I'm exhausted. I have to just sit here for a while because I've gone to meet up with 3 other people at 3 different parts of this stadium. And these are kids who they would hang out together on that grass together. Okay. And I said, well, text him back and tell him to come over here and see you. So he did. He says, Dad, he doesn't want to come over here to see me because same thing. That kid had gone to 3 different sections of the stadium to meet up with 3 different friends. This is the effect this is having, okay? Now, all the clouds opened and hell rained out of the sky last night. We actually had like a hurricane. They delayed the game for 2 hours. We stayed. Why? Because the kids wanted to stay. They wanted to hang out with their friends. So it's not because we didn't stay because we're diehard UVA football fans. We're not. We're fans of our child. That's how we got into football, and that's why we stayed, because him and all of his buddies wanted to keep hanging out together, playing in the rain. So we were hanging out, talking to their parents, meeting new people. It was always wonderful meeting new people. When we'd sit on the hill in the grass with all these different, and we met people that we had something in common with, because, if I meet a random guy at the stadium or a random woman and have a nice conversation, that's great, but that's probably going to be the first and last time, like the young man that was going to medical school. But when I meet somebody on the hill because his or her kid is playing with my kid, we have something in common, and we might actually get together again at a future date so our kids can hang out and so that we can hang out. And that has happened on that hill in that grass in Scott Stadium at UVA. Not allowed to happen anymore because we're not allowed to sit there. So all these families and friends are scattered all over the stadium. It killed the experience. It was not the experience that my wife and I were talking about missing on the beach in the Philippines this winter. We were in Southeast Asia, 9,000 miles away from here, missing that experience. That was what made us homesick. We didn't get to have that experience. We're back now. We've been back from the Philippines since March. We were counting down the days. We'll drive past Scott Stadium or walk past Scott Stadium in the summer when the students are gone, and it's like a ghost town, and we stand outside the fence, and we look at our watches to see what the date is. We start counting down the months, the weeks, and the days for UVA football. Again, not because of UVA football, but because of that experience we have while attending a UVA football game. Folks at the university, I know you're smart, you got PhDs, but you clearly didn't think this one through. So we're at that barrier before we go to sit down with our friends, and everybody's complaining. And I said, why did they do this? Here's why they did it. This is the honest answer I was getting from everybody. They did it because last year, JMU, James Madison University, team over in Harrisonburg, upset us in football. The JMU fans stormed the field, okay? Virginia Tech, our in-state rivalry, last year when they beat us, their fans stormed the field. So instead of, here's a novel idea, UVA. Instead of focusing on actually building a good football program so you win games, so your fans storm the field, no. Instead, they put up a border wall, and they separate friends, they separate families, and they make 12-year-old little children have to walk 6 miles worth of laps around the stadium to see 3 or 4 of their friends during the course of a game, whereas before they'd see all 20 or 30 of them down there hanging out on the hill, and while the parents were together hanging out on the hill. And I was like, this is stupid, this is ridiculous. And I said, like the 1-minute version of this going on over 30 minutes long video now about how, our family's experience and all that stuff. There was a UVA student there, a beautiful young woman. She's a sophomore at UVA. She looks over at me and she says, I refuse to go in there, or I'm not going in there. I said, are you a student? She goes, I am a student and I can go in there, but I won't. And she said, because of what I just said. She is from Charlottesville. She's a local. She grew up here and she's now attending the University of Virginia. And she said to me, her fondest childhood memories are of her and her family going in there on that grass when she was a little girl, when she was a preteen, and they would buy food at the concession stand. She said, it's like we had a picnic. She said when she was a little girl, she looked forward to coming to UVA football games for the picnic with her family on the hill. She said, I never watched a play of any game in my childhood. And then she said later when I was in high school, me and my girlfriends would get together and that's where we'd hang out. And we knew our parents were up there. They had an eye on us. They knew that, nothing, no trouble, no maybe drunk college guys getting frisky or anything. So she felt safe. And she says the fact that they took that away because it's crybaby, it's an elitist mindset, it's a class warfare mindset, and UVA is known for this. They're known for their snobbery. The students are wonderful. The athletes are wonderful. I've known some of the professors, they're wonderful, but something happens to the alumnus. At some point, it's like they hit 40 or 50 and they're like, oh my God, I went to UVA. I'm better than everybody else. And then they go around acting like it. Seriously, not all. One of our neighbors, actually, the wife of the gentleman who took care of our property while we're in the Philippines, she went to UVA and she's a sweetheart. She doesn't have that attitude, but there are a lot that do. So it's not all of them, but there's a lot that do. And I gotta wrap this up. I can't believe you've watched this video this long, but I can believe I've talked this long because this is what I do. This is my job, brah. So, and I got this hat on for a reason. I mentioned, okay, back to the snobbery alumnus. I remember leaving the game one time and there was this couple in front of us, a little bit younger than me. They were like 40. And the woman was saying to the man, she was going on and on about, oh my God, can you believe how loud Jimmy was cheering for UVA? He didn't even go to UVA. He went to JMU. They had a home game this weekend. He should have been over in Harrisonburg cheering for JMU. He didn't even go to UVA. I don't understand how anybody would cheer for a school they didn't even go to. She wasn't drunk. She was being a snob. And her husband, all decked out in Brooks Brothers tweed and stuff, noticed people were giving her that WTF look, because she was talking basically, my name's not Jimmy, but it could have been me. I didn't go to UVA. I loved going to the UVA football games, and I screamed as loud as any student there, louder than the alumnus. 2 years ago, my wife and I were personally invited to sit on the 50-yard line in the stands and watch a game with a gentleman that used to be the quarterback at the University of Virginia. We accepted. We felt honored. I will never sit there again because I remember there was a big play, big pass play. Me and my wife jump up. We start screaming. We hear somebody say, excuse me. We turn around. There's literally like UVA alumnus. It's like the way the rich people used to sit up on the hill on their blankets and sip their tea and watch the Revolutionary War like it was entertainment. That's how they're watching this football game. And they said, will you please sit down, and will you please tone it down? That's not football, okay? So that was the first and last time we'll ever do that. But here's why I wore this hat, and I'm going to wrap this up. I mentioned Veteran Appreciation Weekend, getting the free tickets from my buddy who ran the OCS, sitting there talking to those cadets. And many of you may think that this sounds entitled, and maybe it does, okay? Yes, I'm a combat veteran. I understand I fully enlisted. I willingly enlisted. I knew I was going to war when I did because it was after 9/11. That's why I enlisted. I don't think anybody owes me anything because of that. I do not think that for a minute, okay? I do take advantage of the benefits that I do receive from the VA because I did have some stuff happen, okay? But people don't owe me their appreciation. I'm grateful when I get it. And when they say, hey, thanks for your service, I always say, well, thank you for your appreciation. Because not everybody appreciates me for having to, and they don't have to. I don't want them to. That's one of the things about fighting for freedom. Just as much as I fought for people to have the rights that I enjoy, that I think everybody should have, I also fought for people to have the rights not to be thankful to people like me who fought for their rights. That's a right, and I fought for that right. So there's no entitlement in my mind in regard to my wartime service or my military service. But let me tell you, when I was standing there at that barrier, that wall that this liberal university put up, separating friends, families, I remember I was sitting there looking in at where we always used to hang out, and the little voice in my head says, I'm not allowed to go there. I'm not allowed to go there. And do you know what it feels like to have served in a combat zone in a foreign country and then to come back to yours and be told that there are places you can't go, or there's places you can't go unless you meet certain conditions? A lot of you are saying, oh, whiny baby, why don't you just buy season tickets? By the way, this is my project. I'm clearing out this forest. This whole back 3 acres, we just let regrow from a hayfield for 8 years. And now that it has, I'm going through and thinning it out so it'll grow even more. A lot of work, but hey, I don't mind doing hard work. Builds character, right? Could I buy season tickets for me and my wife and my son? Absolutely. Could I? That's not what it's about. Yes, I could do that, but that's still, the joy of the experience would not be there. There's a Carolina wren up here screaming at me. She must have a nest up there. Those things are kind of obnoxious anyway. So yeah, I could do that. That would get me in. But listen, so many of these kids that we take to UVA games, so many of the kids that go with their families, they don't go to all the home games. Some of these kids, especially some of our football players that we'll take, I've taken more than a few kids to a UVA game who's never been to one before. They enjoyed it. They enjoyed hanging out with their buddies. Some of them have not been back. So it's not practical to buy season tickets for people who are only going to go to one game a year or one game in their life, or maybe 2 games a year. So we're just not going to do it. Frankly, everybody is disgusted that the university did this, throwing up this wall. Isn't that it's a beautiful crepe myrtle. We planted that one, was about 1.5 feet tall. So anyway, what are we going to do about it? We're not going to buy season tickets. We're moving the party. This is where we will now be watching UVA football games with our friends and our family. We've talked about it. We've been texting. We've been on the phone. We talked about it last night. Ended up watching the second half of the game after the rain stopped and they resumed play with a wonderful couple who's been friends of ours for years because our sons have been playing football together for years. Their son's on my tackle team this year. He's a receiver on offense and he's a cornerback and safety on defense. Kid's awesome. Just some of these kids, they could end up playing for UVA someday. But I'll tell you what, a lot of them don't want to anymore. They're talking about becoming Virginia Tech fans. They're talking about going to JMU. I mean, it really upset a lot of these kids. By putting up that wall and these new regulations, they took away the biggest play date the local children look forward to every Saturday for the entire fall. They just took that away. So we're going to do it here. That's why I started the video in the field. That's why I walked around the property. We got plenty of parking in the back. When you leave the next day, don't forget to shut the gate on your way out. But I've got one of those projectors that you can hook up to your laptop or your big screen TV or anything. And we've got king-size bed sheets that we will hang in trees and project the game from the internet onto the screen. If it's daytime, we'll set up tarps to make it dark enough under there so we can see the game. And this is our new lawn. This is where the adults will sit to keep an eye on their children who are going to be getting together with their friends, their family, the people that matter for the things that matter, which is time spent with loved ones. It's not about the game, never has been, never will be. And I'm sure here on that big screen, these kids, they won't watch a single play, but they'll be together. Their parents will have their eyes on them, so we'll know exactly where they are, who they're with, and what they're doing. See you next time for more.